Hello, everyone, and welcome to another safety webinar from Reliance Partners featuring our Safety Impact Team. I'm your host, Tom Albrecht, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer of Reliance Partners. And I'd like to welcome both Mark Barlar and Daniel Vega of our Safety Impact Team. Guys, welcome to today's broadcast. And before you say anything, as always, I'd like you to take a brief moment. Tell us a little bit about your career, including what you're doing today at Reliance Partners. Daniel, why don't you kick it off for us?
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Vega, Director of Safety at Reliance Partners. Before coming over to Reliance, I was a state trooper in Arizona for approximately 10 years, did roadside inspections all those 10 years. I think in 2021, I made a transition to the insurance industry and helping out clients improve their safety and compliance, doing trainings and data queues. Currently what I'm doing with our clients at Reliance.
That's great. You've been a great member of the team. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Barlar. I'm a former master inspector with the Wisconsin State Patrol, retired after 22 and a half years of doing roadside enforcement in between Milwaukee and Chicago. It's an 8-lane interstate, sees 20,000 trucks a day bypass that location. Done approximately 10,000 roadside inspections in my career. I was an instructor for FMCSA for the Part A program, which is your driver's hours of service, CDLs, medical qualifications, hazardous material inspection program, cargo tank inspection program. Currently the director of DOT regulatory compliance, and I help our clients out with anything to do with the regulations and improving CSA scores, no matter what that may be.
That's great, guys. Well, I'm excited because we're doing something a little bit different today, and I'm going to share the screen here. So bear with me just a moment while we transition. Let's see here. Oops. Looking for the icon that would make it go everywhere. How clear is that view? Is that filling the screen, guys?
No, you're not in the present mode.
Yeah, that icon's not here. All right, let's try that one more time here. Bear with us, folks. Okay, it is blocking me. Well, this is not what we normally expect.
If you'd like me to present, I can present, I bet.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? Oh, wait a minute. Here, it just unblocked.
There we go.
All right.
Perfect.
Sorry about that, everyone. Well, as Mark and Daniel mentioned, they've got a lot of experience with commercial truck inspections, and it gives them um, just an incredible background when they work with our motor carrier customers. So, um, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just kind of walk you through what really is the beginning of a 9-part safety webinar series. So, what you can see here is obviously today is day one, and we're going to be going through between now and May 9 different webinars. The next one is October 15th, and you can see that one. We'll send out the sign up link probably either this Friday or Monday at the latest, discussing that. But we're going to go through all of the CSA 7 basics. And then, really, on January 15th, after the first 4, we're going to focus on several case studies that Daniel and Mark have worked with the motor carriers, real life examples. We're going to keep everyone's name anonymous for obvious reasons. And then we'll resume the series in February on parts 5, 6, and 7. And then we'll do a case studies part 2 at a date to be determined in May. Now, as with any webinar, there's a certain disclosure here. This webinar today is designed for educational purposes. It's not intended to be used as legal advice, and the opinions and views expressed herein are not necessarily those of Reliance partners, and they do reflect the views of our professionals. As before we kick it off there, again, contact your Reliance Partners agent for more details on this exciting series. We're excited about it, not only because it's going to be covering important safety information, but by laying the schedule out, hopefully you'll be able to join us for as many episodes as possible. And we are also open to suggestions. I had Daniel and Mark's emails earlier, and we're going to share their contact information again later today. But we would certainly welcome suggestions for future topics. So please keep that in mind. Finally, during today's webinar, you can submit a question in the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. With that said, Mark and Daniel, I'm going to turn it over to you here. I guess we'll start with slide 3. Let's see. It is. Okay.
There we go. All right, so I'm going to start us off here. This is going to be just an overview of the entire system. Then we're going to dive right into unsafe driving. So everything that has to do with motor carrier operations is administered through the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration when it comes to the 7 basics for CSA. They run the CSA program, which is compliance, safety, and accountability. And then under that CSA program is the safety measurement system. These are where your scores are populated at. Go ahead and click next. So, operation of commercial motor vehicle, you got 7 basics. The first one we're dealing with is unsafe driving, and this deals with anything with the operation of the motor vehicle in an unsafe manner. Some of the examples that we have are speeding, reckless driving, improper lane change, the use of a cell phone, and not wearing safety belts. Next.
Okay. Sorry. Oop.
There you go. So the SMS system, the safety measurement system, analyzes the carrier's on-road performance by converting the carrier's inspection and crash data into basic measures and percentiles. So the scores that you have that you can see in your SMS, they're the exact opposite of your grades in high school. The higher the score, the worse that it is.
Or sort of like your golf score, Mark, right?
My golf score is
Yeah.
always high. So all roadside inspection violations that pertain to a basic are assigned a severity weight, a point value that reflects its association with the crash occurrence and crash consequences through utilizing historic data that FMCSA had compiled over the years. The severity weights help differentiate the levels of crash risk associated with the various violation attributed to each different basics of the 7 that there are.
So unsafe driving, part 4, each violation has a severity weight ranging from 1 to 10, where 1 represents the lowest crash risk and 10 represents the highest crash risk relative to other violations in the basic. So say, for example, we have a violation for speeding 15 over, that's a 10-pointer compared to unlawful parking, that's a one pointer. So more severity, more points, less severe violation, less points. An added service designation will add an additional 2 points to each violation.
And Mark, since you used speeding as an example, what if someone's only speeding 5 miles over? Is that better than that 10-point violation when it's 15 miles over?
It absolutely is. And you can get the point values using the SMS methodology book that CSA provides for free. You can get it online. Go to the last page and download Appendix A. It's an Excel spreadsheet. When you put in the violation code and do a search for it, you'll see that speeding 1 to 5 over is a 0-point violation, meaning it has nothing to do in FMCSA's eyes with crash. I think that's a little bit off. I think it has more to do with the regulation that says a speedometer can actually be off by 4 miles an hour in either direction of actual speed. And I think that's why they have it at 0.
Okay, great insights there. Thank you.
So, unsafe driving part 5, all on-road safety events are assigned a time weight, which decreases with time. So if you get a violation from if you get a violation today, so from today until 6 months, that severity weight is multiplied by 3. So a speeding 15 and over is a 10-pointer, but you multiply it by 3, so it's technically 30. From 6 months to a year, you multiply it times 2. A year to 2 years, it's multiplied times 1. That violation doesn't affect your score after 2 years. So it's on your record, technically 2 years.
And guys, I think a lot of times you talk about, while it's 24 months of violations, because there's a lag time in the publication, you typically focus, I believe, on 23 months, because by the time things are reported, you're already at the 24th month. Am I correct in remembering that?
Yeah, so FMCSA, they update their CSA SMS scores once a month. So once we're in that 23rd month, that number is going to sit there for all month. It won't change. Even if we did a DataQ to have it removed, it won't affect the motor carrier until that 24th month when it's going to come off anyways. So we don't deal with anything in the 23rd month unless we want it removed from a driver's pre-employment screening program, because it'll stay there for 3 years.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. So the intervention threshold for unsafe driving, passenger carriers is at 50%, hazmat carrier is 60%, general 65%. I would say probably 90% of us are going to be in the general. It has to be a 65 and above to be in an alert status.
So that's where that comes in with the higher the score, the worse off that you are. You hit that 65% and lower in school, you're normally at an F in that area. 65 and above here, that's the intervention threshold. You're in the alert, and a lot of brokers, motor carriers don't want to work with, or brokers and freight forwarders, they don't want to work with you. And it opens the FMCSA's eyes to pay more attention to your carrier.
So, for either of you, does a failing score for unsafe driving catch the attention of authorities and regulators more than one of the other 7 basic categories?
There are really 3 categories that really have more weight on the cause of crashes, and FMCSA is there to prevent crashes. That's their whole thing. One is the crashes, the crash score. Another is the unsafe driving, and the third is hours of service. Hours of service leads to devastating crashes when motor carrier drivers violate them.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's go to the next one. Yep.
All right. So when it comes to the unsafe driving, how your score is generated is they take what's called the basic measure. The basic measure is calculated by taking a total point value for all violations generated in the last 24 months, and they divide it by multiplying the average power units listed on the MCS 150 from 18 months ago, 6 months ago, and this month. Divide that by 3. That's your average power units, and they multiply it by the utilization factor. Now, all that information, the information for the utilization factor and the power units, comes directly from your MCS 150.
So, a question for either of you guys. The MCS 150 has to be filed every 2 years. We've been in a freight recession for over 3 years. Most fleets have had some sort of shrinkage. Do you recommend that if their fleets have shrunk, that they file the MCS 150 more frequently than that 2-year window, or just to stay on that same cadence?
When your fleet shrinks, lowering your average power units by, showing that you have less, and if you're not driving as many miles, will have a negative effect on your unsafe driving score. So I recommend just staying at the 2-year interval that you are required by law. Now, if your fleet increases and your mileage is increasing, I recommend updating more frequently.
That way, the basic measurement, which utilizes that average power units, it has a chance to maybe be a little bit lower if that average power unit number has grown.
That is correct. And we want that denominator number to be as large as possible. The utilization factor, the worst it can be is 1. The best it can be is 1.6. So if we have an average power units of 50 multiplied by 1 versus 1.6, we want that number as high as possible. So that 1.6 really makes a difference. So does that average power units number. That's why when you're growing, update often. When you're shrinking, update every 2 years.
Yeah, good advice there.
So when it comes to unsafe driving basic measure, here's an example. This company has 3 violations over the past 24 months for speeding 15 over, failing to obey traffic control devices, and failure to wear your seatbelt, all within the last 6 months. They have no other violations other than those 3, all within the last 6 months. Their average power units is 3 from the 18-month, 6-month, and the current month. And the total mileage in the past year is 150,000 miles, giving a utilization factor of 1. Without going into, because it's a pretty complicated calculation for the utilization factor. I have it in my Excel spreadsheet. I have to refer to it every now and then. But with that, the total points for violations sitting at 66, and our average power units is 3, and the utilization factor is at 1. So that gives us 66 divided by 3, puts us at a measure of 22. Next, please. With that measure sitting at 22, and that's sitting in the back of our heads. The next thing we have to look at is there are 5 combination groups in the unsafe driving basic, and those groups they take the qualifying inspections, which is an inspection that lists an unsafe driving violation. So every inspection that has an unsafe driving violation adds a number. We have 3 in the last 6 months. Go ahead and click once, Tom. 3 in the last 6 months puts us at group number 1. So that means we are going to be judged across all the motor carriers in group 1 in the United States. So we're judged against our peers, because normally smaller companies will have less violations for unsafe driving because they have less drivers to actually get into have an issue with an unsafe driving event. So once we know our combination group, now we can go in and see where our measure will stand up with everybody else in that group. Go ahead and click next. So with their example motor carrier having a measure of 22, when you look in the group 1 combination, and when I say the combination, that's combination of motor vehicles, there's another separate group for unsafe driving when it comes to straight trucks. That's a different, same calculation method, just different peer group that they are in. So with the combination at the measure of 22 in column 2, you go all the way down, and we're in between 90 and 95% for our measure. So our score is going to be about 91% for this motor carrier. Now this is putting that 91% means that 90% of the motor carriers in your group are doing a better job with their measure that are within your group, and 9% or 8% are doing worse than you in this one safety group. So this is how they generate that score. They take that measure, they put it in a table, and where you sit in that table is where that ranking comes out. And that's
So
how.
Mark, so I think that you hit on something valuable, because it does get a little confusing every now and then if you don't live in this day after day like you guys do, and I'm sure some of our audience as well today. But if somebody's got a score of 80 that means they're doing worse than 80%, correct?
That is correct.
Yep.
80% of the people in that group have a better measure than they do. And that's what it is. And what's nice with the system that we use, we can do some predictive analysis month to month to show where we would be if you have to update your number of trucks and mileage with and even adding in violations from one month to the next to see approximately where we would be for our score on the next month.
That's great.
Okay. Just continuing with the unsafe driving. Unsafe driving violations can be listed on a level 1, 2, 3, or level 6 inspection. So that officer must be certified to do the level inspection conducted. There's officers out there that you might think are able to do like just a regular trooper, but everybody has to go through the CVSA training to be able to do either a level 3 driver only inspection or a level 1, 2, and 6 inspection. So level 3 is a driver credential administrative only inspection. Level 2 is a walk around vehicle inspection. It includes the level 3, and then a level 1 is the full inspection, which includes the level 2 and 3. And then we got our level 6, which is basically a level 1 inspection for transuranic waste and HRCQ loads of radioactive material.
Very few level 6 are conducted
Yeah.
every year. They're very rare and very few officers are certified. We had two when I retired from the Wisconsin State Patrol. I was one of them, and then another instructor in the state was the other one. So very, very, very rare for a level 6 to be completed.
And of course, we've been hearing a lot about level 1 inspections in light of the English language proficiency, and that I guess the one thing to take away here is you'd think of level 1, 2, or 3 as getting progressively more complicated, but similar to CSA, the lower the number, the better the CSA score. But in this case, the lower the number, the more comprehensive the inspection. So I guess at least it's in sync with the CSA direction of numbers.
That is true. And when it comes to ELP, a level 3, there's going to be an ELP enforcement there at a level 3.
Yeah.
So at the basic level of enforcement, ELP is going to be a part of it, the English language proficiency.
Okay.
Next.
Yep. Did it not go?
Mark.
No, I think it's my turn to go. Okay. Only violations listed on a qualifying inspection report will affect the motor carrier's basic measure. So if your driver gets a ticket from an officer for speeding 45 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, 15 over, unless there's an inspection report that was written along with it, it will not affect the motor carrier CSA scores. It will absolutely affect the driver's MVR, but won't affect the motor carrier's score. So if the violation on an inspection report is not listed in that Appendix A from the SMS methodology, that means the violation doesn't have a point value at all. So it'll be 0 points. And some of those for unsafe driving would be a miscellaneous traffic law from a state or speeding 1 to 5 over. That is also 0 points. So they don't affect your CSA scores at all. Next.
Keep straight there. And just a reminder, we've picked up several people since we started the webinar. We do welcome questions a little bit later on. Feel free to use the chat icon at the bottom of your screen.
So we're going to discuss the most cited violations. Of the top 10 most cited violations, 5 are for speeding over the last 5 years. If you want to hit next, Tom, so we could discuss these violations.
Yeah.
So the top violation is speeding 6 to 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. Then we have 11 to 14. Coming in at number 5. At number 7, 15 or more miles per hour. Then we have speeding 1 to 5 at 8. And then number 10 is speeding work and construction zone. So if we take a look at this, we could see that there is an issue with speeding when it comes to unsafe driving.
Yeah, not surprising. And we're going to go back to some of those most common violations that we had on one of the first 2 or 3 slides as we get closer to the Q&A.
So as you can see, as soon as Tom clicked that one, all of them lit up. That's half of the top 10 violations all have to do with speeding. That's how important it is. And what people don't realize, if it's a CVSA certified officer, it's going to be a minimum level 3 based off of speed. That means they're going into hours of service. They're going to do the ELP. They're going to check for medical cards. Well, they don't need the medical cards anymore. They've got to be attached to their license unless they're intrastate drivers or an exempt industry. Then they would have to have the medical cards to go with it. So officers check all of that on level 3. So getting stopped for speeding leads to other violations. So let's not get stopped in the first point.
Yeah, it
And
really opens a Pandora's box. Go ahead, Daniel.
something to add to that, when your driver tells you, oh yeah, they gave me a warning, it's not a warning. It's gonna affect your scores under unsafe, even if there's no citation on it. So
All right. So moving here, speeding accounts for over 1/3 of all unsafe driving violations, more than double the second most cited violation for Faraday Bay traffic control device. 35% of all inspections that have an unsafe driving violation listed is going to be speed of some sort. The second one is Faraday Bay traffic control device, and most of those Faraday Bay traffic control devices are the drivers failing to stop at open way stations. That Faraday Bay traffic control device could be a bunch of different things. It could be fair to stop at a stop sign, fair to yield at a yield sign, fair to do whatever a sign states out on the road or on the pavement. So those are things to be aware of. But speeding is so important that it's accounting over the last 5 years for 35% of all inspection reports that have unsafe driving violation. So if you want to start with your motor carrier on safety, you start with speed and start focusing on that.
Yeah, and that's a controllable. I mean, when we get into some of the other basics, there's a controllable element to every one of them. But for example, vehicle maintenance, you don't always know when you're about ready to have some sort of an issue, whereas speeding, it's always in the moment. So it's absolutely critical. Let's see. We didn't have anything else on this page. Oh, wait a minute, 35.7. Anything else you wanted to emphasize on that page?
If you go back, Tom,
Okay.
go back.
Yeah.
There we go. Up,
Okay.
go forward. Now they're all going to look this kind of the same. This is where we start talk about mitigating what you can do as a motor carrier to help have a positive effect on speeding. I believe this one is Daniel's.
So don't tolerate speeding. Hand down severe penalties for speeding and advertise the penalties. Reward drivers for not speeding, and use speeding detection services. Use your telematics. They send you alerts when your drivers are speeding. Maybe even consider planning out your routes. If you're like, I'll give an example. If you're only in California, the speed limit everywhere in California is going to be 55 miles an hour. There's no reason why your vehicle shouldn't be governed at a lower speed. So you could also plan out your routes and look at the speed limits and maybe govern your vehicles a little less than what the speed limit is.
We did have a question here in the audience. Let's see here. Why does an officer often give only, or why don't they want to give a citation? Why do they only give a warning?
I would say because 99% of the time they're going to get an attorney and they're going to have to go to court. When they just cite the speeding violation on the inspection report, it's still going to have an impact, but on the company and on the PSP.
Yeah.
That's that's my opinion, but maybe Mark has something else to add to that.
So, you know how people can be lazy? Officers can be lazy too, and they also have levels of enforcement. Who gives out a citation for 1 to 5 over? 1 to 10 over, I never gave a citation to a driver of a commercial motor vehicle. Once you hit 10 plus, that's when I started handing out citations. Um, Handing out a citation means the officer's got to do more work. He's got to do more documentation. He has to do more testing or ensuring that the device that they used is in good functioning status. Radar, there's a whole list of things that an officer has to do after every stop. Utilizing a laser, you have to test that laser before and after the use to make sure that it was operating properly. And if they ever test um, bad, then you gotta avoid all those citations. Now, mine had never tested bad um, for when I used them during my career, but they're certified once a year. Um, in my state, that's the way that we did it. It's just there is more things that go into a citation because there's more information that is needed regarding that speed, how it was obtained, that the courts need to justify a conviction for it. Another thing is officers, and I used to advocate this when I was an instructor. I would advocate not getting giving a citation for speed, just for the fact is if a driver showed up in court, they didn't even have to go in front of a judge. They just talked to the district attorney, and they had a deal that if you came in for speed, they'd knock it down to something else. And it was a set deal. You didn't even really have to contest anything. They just say, okay, if you plead guilty, we will charge you with registration. Same fine amount, 0 points on your MVR. So, and then the point value for CSA would go from whatever the point value is down to 1. So if it's a 1 to 5 over, eh, it's 0. It's not going to show up ever on CSA. But a 15 plus going to a registration takes a 30-point violation for the first 6 months and puts it down to 3.
Yeah.
That's a
There,
huge
That's a
there,
huge
there,
difference.
there was
Yeah.
times where I would write that 1 to 5 on the inspection. 'Cause, I mean, there's no effect on the driver. I mean, on the actual point system.
Yep. So, all of those things has a factor into it. I mean, and officers are what officers are. They're human beings just like everybody else.
There is a couple questions of clarification. So from Juliana, if it is a violation without a citation, just to be clear, it will not affect the driver's record and just the company score.
It will affect the PSP. It'll be
Yep.
on the PSP. It
Will
won't be
not
on the
show up.
MBR unless you get a citation.
Correct.
And then Juliana came back with another point, not Juliana, but Juliana. Um, Thank you for the clarification, but if we really want to reduce speeding on the road, officers need to give citations because when the drivers end up spending money or losing money paying for an attorney, the next time he or she will not speed. That's a good point, a fair point. Um,
I don't
and then
disagree with it.
Yeah. It comes down to officer discretion. I mean, you can't force them to write citations. So
And most agencies have what's called a tolerance policy that recommends to the officer don't give a citation until you hit a certain speed.
fun little story on the Dan Patrick Sports show, which is on Sirius XM. They got into a discussion one day, he and his panelist, about what levels you can speed. Now, this was referring to passengers in regular automobiles, not commercial vehicles. And so several state troopers called in and they had a couple of little rhymes. One said, at 9, you're fine. At 10, you're a has-been, referring to, at 9 miles above the speed limit. And then another one disagreed and said, at 8, you're great. At 9, you're mine. But so somewhere right in there, and of course, you guys were talking about that 6 to 10 threshold. Um,
In, in rural areas, the threshold for citations go down. In urban areas, the threshold goes up just because of the number of speed violators that are out there.
Yeah.
Without it.
We've all been on the road where we may be comfortable going at 73, but traffic's moving at 80. But the law has less tolerance for a truck driver doing that than you and I when we're in our citizens mode. There's another follow-up here. If a driver gets only a warning, but there is a violation for the company, can the driver still hire a lawyer and then do a DataQ by the driver's side?
So my recommendation for that is there are some lawyers out there. I used to handle data queues for the state of Wisconsin for the last few months of my career. And there was one lawyer that I would see all the time, and he got denied all the time because he didn't understand how to do a data queue and be successful at it. One is become a partner with Reliance for insurance, and then you have Daniel and I look it over and see if there's something that we can do. In a few more slides, we're going to talk
Yep.
about the data queues that can be done, including for speeding. And we have both been successful at doing that. And I actually do a class on it, how to do successful data queues. Because since I come over to Reliance back in 2020, I've done over 1,000 data queues and I win 70% of them. But you can't data queue everything. There's got to be something there to focus on that the officer did wrong, misinterpreted. There's an exception to the law before we're going to be successful in doing a data queue. And with Daniel and I and our experience, we knows what those exceptions and processes are because we used to do it every day.
We've only got a few slides left. Please do keep the questions coming, but we're going to see if we can't get through the rest of the slides before we open it up again.
All right. So fair to obey traffic control devices, and most of these come down to fair to stop at scales. That's where most of them come. They're 5-point violations. Every time we don't stop at a scale, we get hit with it. That's a 5-point violation. Normally, they don't get citations a whole lot for this. Things that we can do, we talk to our drivers. Every scale facility, we know where they're at out on the road. There's software out there that shows us where all the scales are. We just need to inform our drivers, especially if they're on regular routes, of where those scales are. If there's a doubt whether or not it's open, you pull in. If there's a doubt whether or not you need to pull in, you pull in. You're not going to get in trouble for not pulling in, but you will, or for pulling in, but you will if you don't go into the weigh station. Talk to the drivers to explain the importance of going into the weigh stations and be vigilant about it. We got to stay on top of our drivers and say, hey, what's going on here? You drive this route all the time. Why didn't you go in? I didn't see the sign. That didn't see the sign. Let me tell you, when you open up that sign, they don't open up the sign and then go run out and get the driver that just passed it 2 seconds after that. They wait until officers will wait 30 seconds to a minute for the driver to be able to pass the open signs for them to get in. So stay in the right-hand lane, slow your speeds down, and just pull on in. And then be very vigilant of everything else that's out on the road, stop signs, traffic lights. Anytime you have stop signs and traffic lights, you're driving in a large vehicle, that speed should be a lot lower than normally. Be vigilant on that as well. There are services out there. There are intelligent cameras that can notify safety personnel, people going through stop signs, going through red lights, and failing to stop at scales. There are systems that are out there.
All right. Go to the next one here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yep.
So seatbelt. Train drivers on the importance of utilizing the seatbelt. Do not tolerate seatbelt violations and use technology for seatbelt compliance. Or use the orange seatbelt. I've had carriers that were getting hammered with these seatbelt violations, and they said, "Hey, what can we do?" I said, "Well, if we look at the large carriers like the Swift, the Knights, they usually have the green seatbelt or the orange seatbelt. That way, their safety people know if they're wearing their seatbelt, and if an officer sees you, he knows that you're also wearing the seatbelt. But you have to be wearing it properly. If it's loose and hanging underneath your shoulder, most of the time you're gonna get written up for that.
Yeah, you see it all the time where they wear it behind their back
Yeah.
and or they're sitting on the lap belt. It has to be worn properly. Otherwise, it's the same as not wearing it.
So what I see here is, it looks like about 73 to 74% of the violations are in those first four categories. Not that the others aren't important, but if you want to have a big difference in your unsafe score or across the board in CSA, this focus on the big four for sure.
Go ahead, next.
Yep, I just did.
So, lane restriction violations. Can't can't harp on this enough, especially in the area that I live in Wisconsin. Stay in the right lane, especially in Indiana and Georgia. I'm literally two hours away from Indiana. It seems like every motor carrier that drives through Indiana gets stopped for speed and being in the left lane when they're not allowed to. Right? So stay in the right lane. If you can be in the right two lanes, stay in the right two lanes. Never move to the left lane. Even a pass, um, stay in that right lane. It's not worth the aggravation of getting stopped, getting inspected, having those points come on for CSA. Just stay in the right lane. Um, and that'll be best. Train drivers on the importance of being in the correct lane is also very important. Letting them know that the point value is 3 is stay on their PSP report, being in the left lane, especially at night, where the drunk drivers like to drive, left lane. How fast they like to go? Really fast. And then they run into the back end of us when we're sitting out in that left lane. We don't want that to happen. All the speed is over in that left lane. So let's stay out of that left lane, stay in the right lane. And we got to talk to our drivers all the time about it.
Yep.
Cell phone usage. Don't tolerate cell phone use while operating a commercial motor vehicle, including while stopped at traffic lights and stop signs. Zero tolerances is very important. Train drivers on the importance of not utilizing the cell phone. It's possible to get criminal charges if the driver causes a crash. I actually, my department, when I graduated, and a little bit off topic, but when I first graduated, I was going to my duty station, and we had an officer killed because a driver covered the camera and was on his phone doing things he shouldn't, driving a tanker, and the right lane was closed, but he wasn't paying attention and rear-ended a trooper, and he got trapped inside that vehicle and passed away. So it's very important. He got charged with manslaughter. Shouldn't be using a phone at all while you're driving.
Well, and this particular violation really gets the attention of plaintiffs' attorneys. Not that the others don't as well, but this one, even though it's only 4.2% of the violations, it will bring out some of the worst nightmares you can imagine.
Yeah. I think part of the reason for that is that the driver knows he can't use a cell phone and is actively failing to comply with the law by actually using it.
Yeah.
There's
Know
actually
that-
apps out there that turn off all, you're able to turn off all the apps for that driver, and just basically have the telephone in case you get any calls, so all social media is deactivated and stuff like that. It's actually a really cool application that some trucking companies do have.
You know, it's interesting is that some of the experiences I had coming over to this side with Reliance partners, I would be doing some training and I would shut the training down. We would be doing Zoom, and there would be people that were driving with the Zoom on, and the camera's moving around. They're recording themselves, or they had the camera active. So I would shut training down and we reschedule it just so we could be safe, um, and not allow that to happen because we don't want anything bad to happen.
Absolutely.
So unsafe driving data queues. It is possible to successfully data queue unsafe driving violations. Violation didn't exist and you have proof of it, including video evidence. That is awesome. I've won several data queues where they said the driver was operating in the left lane. Well, it was at night. The driver could see the officer because of his headlights and it was all lit up, even though the officer's car was dark. You could see all the reflective material. So they moved over to the left lane, passed them, they immediately move over to the right, and they stopped them for that. We were able to successfully data queue that violation to have it removed. Um, so video evidence is huge. It does not help with speed. I'm going to tell you right now, it does not help with speed because GPS speed is not a recognized speed detection method in court. And if anybody tries to use that in court, the judge usually shuts them down unless they can provide expert testimony on it, and that it was operating properly and all. There's a bunch of other things that they would have to do to get that evidence into a court. Violation coding is incorrect, and the correct coding has a lesser point value. This is very important. If we get a Faraday Bay traffic control device because the sign on the road said all trucks stay in the right lane and we were in the left lane, well, lane violation is 3 points. Faraday Bay traffic control device is 5 points. Not every state will, every state handles it a little bit differently, but most states will change the violation over from Faraday Bay to a lane violation, which removes 2 points, which fits within the first 6 months. Then that point value is a total of 6. And everything really helps, especially if you're right on the border of being in the alert or not, or being right at that level of whether you can haul for Amazon or not. So pay due diligence to the coding of the violations, and that's listed on every inspection report, and that's how you look it up in the Appendix A. And if you don't know what that is, get a hold of me or Daniel. We can get you a copy of that. You can download it right off of their website. Citations. Citations when it comes to unsafe driving, go to court for them if it has a point value greater than 1. Ask for a change of violation. Courts love to change a violation to get you to plead guilty so they can get some money, because government loves 2 things. They love power, they love money, right? And it actually pinches the driver a little bit when they got to pay for the things that they have done. So they're really open-minded to doing a plea agreement of changing the violation, don't matter what it is, to a different violation just to get the driver to pay some money for that. Things to stay away from: if you're speeding 15 over and they want to drop the speed, ask for something different. Some states, the speeding violation is the same state statute for 15 over as it is for 10 over as it is for 1 over. So a change of violation, they have to change the state statute that in court for it to be a change of violation. Just something to be aware of. If you ever have a question, give me or Daniel a call and we will talk to you about it. We handle those all the time. Also, some violations need evidence. Can you go back there real quick, Tom?
Yep.
All right. Some violations need evidence to support the violation, such as speeding. Speeding needs a speed limit, a speed detected, and a device used to measure the speed. Now, you're not always going to win these in court. There's a strategy to doing these types of data queues because you want the officer to forget about this traffic stop and the particulars of it. So you don't want to data queue it the next day. They're going to remember what happened yesterday, but they may not remember the traffic stop from 6 months ago. They may even have video recordings of it, because a lot of officers will have the video, but they get rid of those videos over time. So you may want to give it a little bit. If you got a speeding 15 plus, well, that's not telling me anything. There's 5 different speeding codes that they can write on the inspection report. If they write the wrong code, they could be assessed the wrong point value. So be aware of that. And you don't know what the speed is if they just say speeding 15 plus. Well, what was the speed limit? What was he doing? Did he use radar? Did he use laser? Did he use VASCAR? Did he pace the vehicle? California has been writing speeding violation because they estimated the speed coming into a scale. I'm like, are you kidding me? So there's supposed to be a device and it shouldn't be your eyeballs. Um, Other things that we were really successful at is use of us, except for Georgia, use of a cell phone has a definition. If the definition isn't complied with, then there is a possible data queue to be done. Most states really adhere to this, the definition. Um, so if it doesn't meet the definition listed in 390.5T and the use of a handheld mobile telephone, then a data queue can be done to potentially have that violation removed. Watching Netflix on your phone is not the use of a handheld mobile telephone. So that 10 pointer, and I swear to God, it happens all the time. That 10 pointer could go to a 5 pointer if they change it to inattentive driving. It could go to a 0 pointer if they change it to the violation of equipping your vehicle with unsafe equipment. That's another violation that carries 0 points. And Daniel and I, we do a lot of these types of data queues, and we're pretty successful at them.
I'm going to remind the audience, we do have one more question in the queue right now about the Samsara camera speed recording. And while you guys are looking at that question, I believe we are at the end. I'm going to go back to the beginning, take a look at that question, guys, and then I want to make another comment, and then we'll take that question and hopefully another one or two. So,
Is that regarding like evidence for court, or is the question we're referring to can they
um,
record?
yeah, the question specifically. So, hold on just a second. So, just as a reminder, there's Mark and Daniel's contact information, as well as if you have suggestions for future safety webinar topics, we would welcome that. Shoot your ideas to Mark or Daniel. We've obviously got the agenda laid out. That's part of what I wanted to quickly review here was this review. Our next seminar will be at 3 p.m. Oops, I lost. Can you still see the screen?
Yes.
Yep, I
Okay.
still see.
Okay. Um, it will be on October 15th at 3 p.m. And you can see the agenda where we're going to cover everything again. Let me pull that question up here, guys. Let's see. Okay, the question is, what about Samsara camera speeding video recording? So I think they're, because you had said that, I think you said that, I forgot what couldn't.
Off, Yeah, officers are not going to take that video recording and the speeding that's listed on that recording as evidence that speeding wasn't done. And the reason for that is there are several ways that a camera can get speed. One, it can get it from the electronic control module of the vehicle. So if that electronic control module doesn't have the proper sizing of the tires, then that speed will be off. If they're using GPS coordinates over time, now they don't update. How often does that update? Does it update every second, every half a second? You wouldn't have to know the technical specifications for that device and not just know them. You got to work with it. You got to be certified with it. It's got to be like your camera. You'd have to have Samsara's experts. And if they didn't make the camera, whoever made the camera, their people come out and talk about how their device actually determines the speed. And then you would have to have someone come in and talk about how the GPS system works and how that determines speed. You would have to have all of these experts come out, which would make it prohibitively expensive to do, even if you could locate them.
So basically, they've been sold an extra bell and a whistle that's not really going to help them at all.
Well, not in a court and not for data queues, but it will help them monitor the driver and what their driver activities are.
Okay. Let's see here. I wanted to just put this one page back up. You know, on several slides, you guys talked about the importance of communicating with the drivers. I'm thinking of several layers of communication. Obviously, the C-suite through videos, emails needs to be setting a tone of safety across the organization. But when you get into things like weigh stations and that, it really boils down to the driver or the fleet manager constantly emphasizing safety, what's coming up today, etc. In your experience, are the driver managers as proactive in communicating all of the things that we've discussed today as they should be?
I think some are and some aren't. It just depends on the duties they have because there's some safety managers who have more than just being a safety manager. So it just depends.
Yeah, it's been my experience that those safety managers that are constantly talking to their drivers, constantly talking to the dispatchers, constantly relaying safety, and then having a consequences behind activities that don't comply with the company's efforts with safety, right? So you gotta communicate it, you gotta follow through um, with corrective action and and give credit where credit is due. If a driver doesn't get stopped for an entire year for anything because they're not speeding, following too closely, reckless driving, positive and negative corrective actions, they all help. And then, educating them on not only is this affecting the company, it affects your MVR because some speed violations, there are insurance markets out there that say you got a speed and a seatbelt. We can't insure that driver. So they got to release them, right? And then you have the pre-employment screening program where it will sit on that's their resume if that driver wants to move to another company. So you check the pre-employment screening program, and you see that this driver's been stopped 5 times for speeding in the last 3 years. Is that someone that our company is going to want to hire? All the insurance markets talk about pre-employment screening program. They all check the MVRs. They do periodic reviews of that as well. So the more that we stay on top of it, not only will it be in the back of the mind of the driver saying, I do not want to talk to my safety person today, so I'm not speeding today. That actually happens, kind of like parents and kids. Kids don't want to deal with the parents, so they're going to comply with what you're telling them and not do certain things. They might get right up to the line, but they don't want to step over that line. Um, when I was teaching my kids on how to drive, I'm teaching you the letter of the law. You cannot speed. You have to come to complete stops. There is no rolling stops because over time they're going to remember that. And when they do speed, it won't be that much. If they do roll through a stop sign, it's going to be slow. If you allow them to roll through slowly, they're going to roll through fast and eventually get stopped and cited for it at some point. So talk to our drivers, constant communication.
And just to add on what Mark was saying is make sure we recommend that you guys run the PSP and MVR because that's the only way you're gonna be able to see how much speeding violations or unsafe driving violations the drivers receiving. Because as we talked about it, not all officers give you citations, so we do recommend the PSP.
Yep. And on a side note, with English language has been a huge thing over the last what, 6 months
3+ months? Yeah.
Drivers who are getting ELP violations are getting let go by their motor carriers because they're out of service indefinitely, then go apply to another motor carrier if they don't run that PSP. And even if they were issued a citation, that ELP will not show up on an MVR. That's a
Someone
fact.
raised their hand, but I didn't see a question. So
So be
if
aware that run that PSP, see if they had an ELP violation, and if they have, they got to, you know, you got to take steps before you can hire them.
let me see if there was a question associated with that. No. Well, whoever raised your hand a moment ago, feel free to shoot that question in. And, when I look at this list, and of course, there can be other violation examples, but these are the bread and butter. And we saw the entire ranking later in this slide deck, which will be available to everyone who signed up today. We'll have that out in the next 2 or 3 business days in PDF. But I see, compared to other CSA broad categories, basic categories, I see a lot of controllable elements here. Now, sometimes reckless driving or an improper lane change, something may be happening right ahead of you that puts a driver in a reactive mode. But these other things are extremely controllable compared to, let's say, the other topics, crash indicators, vehicle maintenance. Again, there's a big control element, but some of these you have a little less control over. Um, and we're going to be ultimately covering all of them, as you see here on the schedule laid out through the end of May next year. We're just about at our time limit. I
We
don't
do have
see.
one question that came across about ELP.
Okay.
You can answer
Regarding
it.
Oh, yeah,
ELP,
I see it. Yep.
So, regarding
ELP,
ELP, how the driver should resolve it? Should he pass some course, or what should they do? Passing a course is a first step, but ultimately it's going to come down to the officers out on the road being able to understand them. So the drivers really got to utilize English. I took 3 years of Spanish in high school. I know like 3 words because I never use it, right? It's going to be the same thing with drivers that have difficulty with English. They have to use it all the time. If there's a question on it, send them through a course. Do a mock inspection with someone that does not speak any other language than English. I'm helping out some prospective clients with an ELP course, and I am the mock inspector talking to the drivers, and I give them the thumbs up or say, this driver doesn't understand a word that I'm saying. Because I enforced this regulations between 1998 and 2016. Pretty much after 2016, the enforcement policy had changed on it. It didn't change back until earlier this year. So I enforced it, including when it wasn't out of service, when it was out of service, and then when you couldn't really enforce it at all.
just to add on this ELP stuff,
Yep.
if you get put out of service second time, drivers gonna have more problems, criminal citations, because they didn't abide by the out of service order. So I actually had a carrier that already experienced that, so that driver did get a criminal citation the second time.
And it does seem clear that even though there have been states that started aggressively, states that started more gradually, that we are moving into an environment where there's going to be a little bit more consistent enforcement, except for perhaps California, which is sort of unto itself at times. I do hear of a lot of fleets, they may have an ESL class, English as a second language, which is not to be confused with you really are well versed in speaking the language, but it's to help you become proficient in some of the basics. But then to have your team, or you could hire the Reliance folks, come in and do that mock inspection, maybe it's just somebody on your motor carrier who doesn't speak another language, just as Mark and Daniel suggested, in a mock inspection or pretend inspection, just walk them through either a level 3 or maybe a whole level 1. Let's get out and look at the truck. Where'd you start from? Where's your destination? Can you give me the ELD device so I can upload it? An officer may ask. There's a whole bunch of things that can go on there. And you just have to get them comfortable with hearing those questions. And better to have someone on your team do that, especially regularly for a while, even if they have passed an ESL class.
Yeah. And there is no set way to get them back into service other than their own personal recognizance. The motor carrier stating, yeah, he can read and speak the English language well enough to respond to official inquiries, which is the wording that is used on the inspection reports and in the enforcement memorandum. We had another one. If a driver has EOP violation, to terminate him is the only option. That is a motor carrier's decision on how to handle that. They 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 shouldn't be operating because if they get stopped again, another violation, they could be hit with that out of service order on top of it, which hits CSA pretty hard. And that's, I believe, an acute violation as well if you get audited.
Well, as we wrap it up here, there are also some companies that I'm not going to mention by name that have been using ELP and then just the whole falsification of CDLs and then multiple DOT numbers to begin to call out some of the bad actors in the industry. One has been posting on LinkedIn, amongst other places, motor or examples of trucks that have been put out of service, and 3.5, 4 hours later, they're seen on the road again. So
Mhm.
whatever folks have been used to getting away with through mid 2025, it feels like the enforcement of the overall regulations is going to continue to get a little bit more restrictive than it's been in a long, long time. Folks, we're out of time here. Want to thank everyone who participated today. Daniel, Mark, thank you. Let's see here. One more time, put up your, there we go, cell phone, email information. We look forward to seeing you and some of your colleagues and friends in the industry on October 15th. Look for that sign up link in the next 2 to 3 business days. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Guys.